Welcome to Where Parents Talk. My name is Lianne Castelino. Our guest today is a best-selling author and an entrepreneur. Hunter Clarke-Fields is also a thought leader in mindfulness, a podcaster, and a mother of two teen girls. She joins us today from Delaware. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Lianne. I'm happy to be here.
Well, and we're talking about mindfulness today. And I'm curious, Hunter, what was the catalyst that pivoted you from being a frustrated, challenged parent, mom, to then becoming a mindfulness mentor and then eventually an author as well?
Well, the catalyst was certainly my daughter. It's funny, she's 17 now, and she's helps me out in all kinds of things, and it's so funny to think about that. But when she was 18 months, 2 years old, it really wasn't her. She was the catalyst for my temper, which was the real driver. She started saying no to me. She started having problems with the way I was parenting her, which wasn't altogether very skillful. And my temper came out. If she had big upset feelings, if she had a tantrum, it would trigger a mommy tantrum. She was very highly sensitive, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So I was very highly sensitive, and it was incredibly shame-inducing, and it was horrible because this was exactly how I didn't want to parent. This was the most important thing in my life, to have this good relationship with this child, to raise a child who's, kind, confident, not torn up inside in any way, right? And I could see that my anger, my temper, my yelling was putting distance between me and her. It was scaring her. I could remember hearing her crying in her room, me crying outside of her room, just feeling like, oh my gosh, something has to change. So I had been listening to parenting coaches and looking into things, and I was learning these wonderful ways to respond that I couldn't implement when I was starting to get triggered and frustrated. And I was like, I've just read about this 3 hours ago. Why can't I say it in the moment? And of course, now we know that's because of the way the stress response affects the brain. But as I started to dig into that, I realized, I need to go back to these mindfulness practices that I've been reading about since I was a teenager, that I had implemented a bit before I got pregnant, and that really helped. And I needed those to help calm my reactivity, to have any chance of being able to improve this situation. I needed to calm myself.
We'll dive into those mindfulness practices in a minute, but I did want to pick up on one thing you said there, which is it sounded like you had the self-awareness as a parent to realize that this temper piece couldn't continue if you were going to, become a better parent. What was the tipping point, though, that you said to yourself, you know what, something's got to give, something's got to change, and it's going to start now? Was there a particular incident?
I mean, I can remember sitting outside her doorway, hearing her crying in her room, and just feeling this incredible guilt. But the truth was, it wasn't just one moment. It was because I had scared her again. It was a multiple times, and just feeling like this feeling of, I knew from the beginning, this is exactly what I didn't want, because this is how I get this from my father. I get this temper from my father, and he scared me. He had a rage when I was a kid. I remember cowering behind a door, scared of him. And he's a very loving person in many, many ways. But it wasn't very unusual in the 80s for that to be happening. But it was exactly what I had vowed not to do. And here I was doing it, repeating that cycle. So I just had to, that was the catalyst. It was just seeing this pattern repeating.
Could you take us through, Hunter, the difference between mindfulness and meditation for parents out there who may not be that familiar with those terms as it relates to parenting?
Sure. Yeah. Meditation is a way to practice mindfulness. It may be the most common way maybe we practice, but mindfulness itself, we can be mindful in any moment. Mindfulness is making a choice to put your attention into what's happening in the present moment, whether it's your child, you're driving, your steps, you're sitting in your breath, putting your attention in what's happening in the present moment, and very crucially, with an attitude of kindness and curiosity. So rather than noticing, you can be mindful of your thoughts, noticing your thoughts and shaming and blaming yourself for them. You notice your thoughts and you're like, isn't that interesting, right? You practice non-judgment with them. You can practice being mindfully listening right here and now. It's about putting everything down, stopping, focusing your attention, and noticing, what arises as I say these words and what doesn't arise, right? Hearing the sounds come and fall away. And it's different from regular life in that normally, we evolved to have a brain that's pretty keen on planning into the future, right? That's kind of where a lot of our anxiety comes from. We're planning into the future. Even when we're talking, we might be planning what we're going to say next. And to be really present is a little bit different. It's practicing to kind of notice our tendencies to get drawn away by all our different thoughts and sensations, and then bringing ourselves back to the present moment and what you're focusing on. And that doesn't mean stopping your thoughts or erasing your thoughts or anything like that. It just means being able to have the muscle to come back and be present and be aware of what's happening when you want to. Sometimes I think, we're always in this going, doing mode as parents, especially and we kind of think, if I just get this one more thing done, I get all these things done, and then I will be relaxed, and then I will be present. And we tend to spend our days like the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then we think, when I get to that vacation, then I'm going to really be present with my kids. And sometimes I think we've been training our brains to always think of the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and never be satisfied in the moment. We get to that vacation, we get to that moment, and we can't relax and be present and focus on our kids because we have been training our brains to always go and do. So mindfulness is really about practicing to be present here and now with whatever is arising, whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable.
As I listen to you unpack that, Hunter, what strikes me is that, we have never been in a world more than today where distraction is a key feature of all of our lives. And at the same time, you could argue that mindfulness, as a result of that distraction, has probably never been more necessary. So how then do you go about, especially with parents who are now dealing with other little human beings in their lives and their needs and wants and their emotions, how do you go about just managing that piece there about how to get to a place where you're shutting everything out around you in a distracted world, in a distraction-inducing world, to then say, I need to have the discipline to practice mindfulness?
Well, I would say it's not shutting everything out, but yeah, that's a great question because we're distracted all the time in all the moments. I think that what we have to remember is that how we live every single day is how we live our lives, and what we practice grows stronger. So if we're practicing waking up and grabbing our phone first thing, we're doing that every day. We're making that distraction muscle stronger. If we can put our phones downstairs and practice maybe sitting on the side of the bed and just taking 10 deep breaths, then we're building a muscle of being present, right? It can be built in very small, very doable ways for people with busy lives. We can practice really being present with our kids. Like when we're walking with our kids, I remember walking my daughters to the local Montessori school that we live near. And there are some days where it could be the same exact thing happening. I'm walking with my daughter across the Peace Park, holding her hand. And on one day, I'm completely not present. I'm wondering if an email came through, maybe checking my phone, thinking about what I need to do exactly when I drop her off, all the different things. I'm not aware of the feeling of her little hand in mine. I'm not listening to what she's saying to me. But that same exact moment could be practiced mindfully, where I'm slowing down my walking, my phone is off, I'm feeling the feeling of her hand in mine. I mean, now I think about it, what I wouldn't give to feel that like 2-year-old hand in mine. But feeling that feeling of the hand, I'm slowing down my steps. I'm feeling my footsteps on the ground. I'm feeling my breath come in and out. I'm noticing, a thought of what I have to do later. And then I'm saying, okay, that's fine, but I'm going to come back to noticing here and now. I'm really listening to what my daughter has to say. I'm looking around. I'm noticing the sense of the air on our skin and the, birds singing, whatever there is around me. So they're very, very different experiences. And our kids really sense the difference, really, really know the difference, right? Like, because what they really, really crave, like the way we can show our love the best is to just be present with them, to be really here and really see them. Like, do you see me? Do you hear me? Attention is how we show love. So if we can give our attention to what's here and now and what's happening with them, that's like the best gift we can give our child. In fact, there's a quote I like to share by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, and he says, when you love someone, the best thing you can offer is your presence. How can you love if you are not there? And to me, that's a very profound motivator to practice being present a little bit every day, not all the time, forever and ever. You don't have to be the Dalai Mama, but a little bit every day.
Now, you talked briefly about having practiced mindfulness while you were pregnant. I'm curious as to how it helped you during that time. And then how did it help you once you became a parent and you decided that you needed to go back and sort of refresh and maybe relearn and learn new aspects of mindfulness?
Well, when I was pregnant, I remember thinking that this was going to be the solution to everything. I remember being really big and pregnant and sitting with a meditation group and just like rubbing my little belly, big belly, and thinking like, oh, look at this. They're going to be so calm. Look at this. I'm meditating. This is going to be amazing. And just thinking like it's all in the bag. Ha ha ha. Anyone who's a parent know that was not true, obviously. She came out so sensitive, and, there's so many reasons for that. It did help me when I was pregnant. And then afterwards it sort of fell away, and it really became something then that I had to return to. I needed that grounding. I needed that stability. Becoming a parent, shakes our lives in ways that we can't even fathom, right? We're back in that parent-child relationship. My role in the world had changed profoundly, and I was scared that I wasn't doing it right. I'm sure there was postpartum anxiety, I think, in the mix there. And so I needed that sense of grounding, of being steady, of being stable. And she needed that from me desperately, because she needed somebody who could be steady and stable when she had those big feelings. So it just became imperative, right, that I go back to this tradition. And I could really see that in the parenting world, no one was talking about this. There was this assumption that parents were just, perfect mediums for whatever. You could just say whatever response you wanted to say if you make that choice. And that's absolutely not true. I learned all the lessons the hard way. And I could see that the world of mindfulness really needed to talk to the world of parenting, that we needed to take care of ourselves, that we needed to understand, when our reaction was outsized from what was happening, there might be something else to become aware of there, some healing to do. So there's a lot of awareness work that we don't really relish doing, but is so important for us to do as parents.
Along those lines, then, what would you recommend to parents in terms of, preventing reactivity and staying grounded with their children during difficult moments, actual tangible steps that they could take?
Sure. Well, I wouldn't recommend faking your calm. That if you're trying that, how's that working for you? Because what happens is we'll say, okay, Lianne and Hunter want me to be a calm parent to help my kids stay grounded. And I'm calm. I'm calm. I'm calm. And then we're like exploding, right? Because we're pushing down those feelings and then they're coming out all over the place. So that doesn't work. What we need to do in those moments, I think of it as the 3 R's. And first, recognize that you're triggered, that you're upset. Recognize your feelings. This is what Dan Siegel calls name it to tame it, right? When we can verbally acknowledge what's happening for ourselves and what's happening for our kid, what's happening in the situation, it just takes the temperature down, So I'm feeling frustrated. That's a win. That's great if you can say that out loud, because you're acknowledging what's already there. Your kid can already feel there's something different in the air, right? It's not like they're clueless. They can feel it. B, you're taking down the temperature. And then C, you're also teaching your kid emotional intelligence by modeling it, right? So saying, I'm feeling frustrated. And then also it's this bell of mindfulness, bell of awareness to say, okay, now I need to take some steps to address my nervous system, to address that part of myself that's feeling threatened, that's feeling that stress response, that fight, flight, or freeze stress response. That's the most highly developed, highly attuned response in the body, like when we're born. So I need to take care of that. So then recognize, okay? The second R is if necessary, if you're able, if your kid is safe, remove yourself. It's better to take a break and say, I need a minute, than it is to scream at your kid. It's lovely if you're in the wonderful grounded place and you're going to be able to stay there and practice the third R and model that for your kid. But a lot of times we're not, and it's okay. You have permission to be human. If you need to take a break, and if you can. So recognize it, remove yourself. And then the third R is just use your resources. So your body is in a fight, flight, or freeze stress response, right? Which may mean that your jaw is getting tight, your shoulders are getting tight, your voice is getting raised, right? You're feeling like more aggressive and agitated, right? That's fight, flight, or freeze. So what do? Resources that work include slower exhales. The breath is cliche because it works. So actually a way to think about it is that each inhale is like a mini fight, flight, or freeze stress response. And each exhale we take is like a mini rest and relax, the opposite response. So if you take a breath in for 4 and exhale for 6, let's try it again just for good times. Inhale 4. Exhale 6. You can probably, with even just 1 or 2 breaths, feel the difference. Mm-hmm. I can.
Yeah.
So say if you take 4 or 5 of those, you're getting your whole brain back on track, right? You're able then to access your prefrontal cortex where your verbal ability, impulse control, and creativity are, right? Problem solving, all of that. So resources include the breath. They include shaking it out, shaking out your hands. They include, you could take a drink of water, splash water on your face, use a mantra like, this is not an emergency, or I'm helping my child. There's so many resources, but it's important that we practice them, that we acknowledge that we're going to need them sometime, and that we give ourselves permission to model and show this to our kids.
Those are all great tips, certainly, and speak to what the parent can do to manage their own emotions. But what about when it comes to handling the big emotions of their child? What strategies can you suggest in terms of how parents can manage their kids' bigger emotions, especially if we look at times like around tantrums or resistance as they get older, certainly into the teen and adolescent years?
Well, the first step is all of the previous steps, right? The first step is for you to be able to be present. So if your kid's having some big feelings, you don't want your reactivity to add to the mix. If, they're having some big reactions and you're in a bit of fight, flight, or freeze and you start yelling or, then it escalates things, right? We don't want that, right? So when our kids are having big feelings, whether they're mad at us or a situation, whatever the situation is, the best way to help is to really listen and to really be present. So sometimes as parents, we want to help our kids, and so we jump in to fix the situation, right? We either deny their feelings, we tell them the feelings are not really real, or you're okay, you're fine, it's okay, which is incredibly frustrating if you have some big feelings for someone to tell you you don't have them. So that we call that a barrier, communication barrier in mindful parenting. Or a parent might go in and try to solve the problem. Here, if you do this, why don't you do this kind of thing. And that is incredibly frustrating because sometimes when we're having big feelings, just like step one, when we have our own big feelings, is to recognize it. The same is true with our kids' big feelings. We need to be able to recognize it, they want to feel really seen and heard, right? That's what our kids really need from us. So if they're having a problem, if they're having a big upset moment, first step is to recognize it, to really see and really hear it. And you may imagine what that response is for you, but I would invite you to consider that your first response doesn't have to be in words. You can just listen, be really present. Notice how you feel in your body. Notice what your kid is saying. Notice if they're upset, what they're saying, what they're not saying. Just be curious and be present, even though it's uncomfortable. You may be in a situation with your kid that you can't fix and that they're really upset at, or they may be really upset at you, and that's all very uncomfortable. And I encourage you to not run away from that feeling right away, to sit with it for a minute. And that's kind of how we digest these difficult feelings. I think of whether they're our kids or our own, I think of our difficult feelings as like little toddlers who really want to be seen and heard. And they're like at your pant leg, being like, see me, hear me. And they're not going to go away. They're going to hold on to that pant leg until you see and hear them. So it's the same thing with our feelings. As we start to see and hear them, it's like that feeling of, I've got to get out of here, really lessens. It's kind of paradoxical, and it goes away as we stay with it, right? So stay with the feeling. And then, what the tool we practice in mindful parenting for when our kid has some big feelings is if they're able to hear you, right? If they're having a tantrum, there might be nothing you can do. If you're able to, you stay, you do those longer exhales. You try to be the calm, be the mountain, and be there for when the storm is over. Keep them safe, right? That may be all you can do. Maybe if you have an older kid, or there's, they're able to hear and see you, you can reflectively listen. You can recognize the feelings out loud. You're so upset. Oh man, that's really frustrating. Whatever that is, what might you say to a good friend who was feeling that feeling?
I'm curious, Hunter, along those lines, when you decided that you were going to practice mindfulness in your own life, did that then usher in any other changes that you felt you had to make in order to support mindfulness parenting in your own home?
Yes, absolutely. I think what it made me aware of was that to make this a priority, I wanted to simplify and I wanted to slow down a little bit. I did not want to add things that were going to make us rush. So no back-to-back classes, maybe one, class per season. I wanted to be able to take my time and not feel that rush. Because really, anytime we're rushing, anytime we're in a hurry, our body's fight, flight, or freeze stress response is triggered because, as back in the day, when there were no clocks, there were no exact times to be at a certain place. There was no rushing, right? So anytime we were rushing, there was something to be worried about, to be scared about. So yeah, to really slow down was important to me.
So as a mindfulness teacher, an author, a parent yourself, an entrepreneur, you've got a lot going on. You see this question from different perspectives. Are there commonalities in terms of where parents who want to practice mindfulness, where they're challenged, where they experience pain points, and how can they overcome it so that they can, find themselves on a journey of mindfulness and parenting?
Well, the pain point is always, how do I practice? Feeling the support for practice, because we're often like an individual trying to do this practice in a world that's very distraction prone and is pushing us every day to be more distracted. Mm-hmm. So those are the challenges. So if you're going to practice, say, a walking, slowing down and walking mindfully to school, or you're going to practice maybe a sitting meditation for 3 minutes in the morning or something like that. The challenge is creating a habit.